One of the hardest sounds to achieve in a vocal mix is that modern pop air. I'm sure you know what sound I'm talking about. You've heard it on countless hit records. It's that crisp clarity that helps them cut through the mix and sound great on any speaker. Now, if you've ever tried to get that level of professional shine and polish in your own vocal mixes, you know how tricky it can be. One minute they're sounding dull and lifeless, the next minute they're harsh and thin, and it can be really hard to find the sweet spot. The pros have a ton of tricks for getting this sound every time on any vocal. So in this video, I'm going to share the secrets to getting that industry quality clarity and air on your vocals. So when you think about trying to get your vocal to sound airy, you probably think about reaching for an EQ. And it makes sense because EQ is a great tool for sculpting the tone of a sound. But let me show you the problem with using EQ to try to get that airy sound on a vocal. So I've got this vocal soloed out right now just so we can really hear what's going on. And take a listen as we boost a high shelf into this vocal.
You didn't love me. For the whole time, I put you above me. Stupid, I was so blind.
So some of the time the vocal sounded okay with that boost, but most of the time it sounded brittle and harsh, especially on the sibilant sounds. Now, generally speaking, high shelves aren't a great option on vocals in general because it does bring up so much stuff that we don't really want in the highs. So we might look at using a bell. But even with a bell, we're still gonna have a really tough time to get this vocal to sound airy without getting harsh on the sibilants.
Friends should have never been the one to take you off of the fence, cause...
So that brittleness you're hearing on the sibilants of this vocal, that's a telltale sign of an amateur vocal mix. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the vocal was recorded poorly or sung poorly, or even that the mic or preamp wasn't great. You could use a $5,000 tube mic, but if you boost the highs like crazy like this, it's still going to sound brittle and harsh. So let's look at a better way to achieve this sound. So I've got Xvox Pro pulled up and we're going to start by dialing in the EQ. Now we actually only have 3 EQ bands and the Air Plus slider, which is something different. Under the hood, it's a completely separate parallel dynamic circuit that is infusing air while also controlling harshness. And that's why we can get such crisp, clean air on vocals without introducing harshness like you would on traditional EQs. It's also why you don't see the EQ curve move as you turn up the Air Plus. Now you have to be careful. Just because a plugin has an air slider doesn't mean it's doing this process. It's actually a very intricate piece of DSP under the hood that achieves this. So the Air Plus slider is one piece of the equation, but the other piece is the de-esser. Now the de-esser is really important to balance with the Air Plus slider in order to help control that sibilance. Let's take a listen as we boost the Air Plus and the de-esser and try to get that perfect balance of high end on this vocal.
Friends should have never been the one to take you off of the fence, cause you didn't love me. For the whole time, I put you above me. Stupid, I was so blind. Now
I'm exaggerating it quite a bit here. This is an insane boost on the Air Plus slider just to show how you can boost it an incredible amount and get all that crisp airiness without getting harsh on the sibilants. So let me dial it into a more tasteful setting.
Friends should have never been the one to take you off of the fence, cause you didn't love me. For the whole time, I put you above me. Stupid, I was so blind. Now.
So that's the first step, to balance the Air Plus slider and the de-esser in order to infuse all the air you want while also making sure the sibilance doesn't get harsh. But this next step is maybe even more important, which is sculpting the rest of the vocal tone with EQ. So there's 2 things to look out for with EQ. The first is to make sure that we don't introduce harshness by cranking the highs up too much. Even if you want your vocal to be bright and crisp, it's actually usually the mid slider that's going to bring that clarity and crispness, not the high slider.
Friends should have never been the one to take you off of the fence, cause you didn't love me. For the whole time, I put you above me. Stupid, I was so blind.
So the mids are actually bringing more of that clarity and crispness that we want. We might boost the highs a little bit, but mostly we're going to rely on the mids.
Friends should have never been the one to take you off of the fence, cause you didn't love me. For the whole time, I put you...
I can also just drag this tone handle and push it up a little bit if I want to get a little bit more crispiness on this tone curve.
Friends should have never been the one to take you off of the fence, cause you didn't love me. For the whole time, I put you above me. Stupid, I was so blind.
Now, the second thing we have to be careful with on EQ is not to thin it out too much. It might be very tempting to just pull out all the lows and try to get rid of the muddiness, but a lot of times that's just going to make the vocal sound thin.
Friends, should have never been the one to take you off of the fence, cause you didn't love me.
So instead of that, we're going to use a high pass filter and we're going to set it up here, maybe right around 70 hertz or so. And then we're just going to tuck the lows in just barely if we need to.
Friends, should have never been the one to take you off of the fence, cause you didn't love me. For the whole time, I put you above me.
So now let's take a listen in the context of the mix to really finalize this EQ curve.
Friends, should have never been the one to take you off of the fence, cause you didn't love me. For the whole time, I put you above me. Stupid, I was so blind, now I must see. Should've realized how you didn't trust me, cause you know you went and played me. After I gave you all that I could, I was hoping to save you.
So you can hear how we're getting all that polish without getting harsh. Take a listen before and after the EQ.
Friends, should've never been the one to take you off of the fence, cause you didn't love me. For the whole time, I put you above me. Stupid, I was so blind, now I must see. Should've realized.
So we're shaping the tone with the EQ curve, we're infusing the air with the Air Plus slider, and we're balancing it all with the de-esser, making sure that we're catching the sibilance and smoothing it out. So next, I want to show you a trick you can do with the compressors in Xvox Pro to help you get a smoother top end on a vocal. This color control on the Xvox Pro compressors is insanely powerful because it allows you to control how the compressors react to the high frequencies. And this is really important when you're compressing vocals because obviously we have sibilance to worry about. And being able to control the color of the compression gives us another dimension of control to really dial in this compressor for this particular vocalist. Right? Every vocalist, their sibilance is a little different. Sometimes you need to tame it. Sometimes you actually want to bring it out more to help them articulate. In this particular instance, we want to help tame this sibilance.
Friends, should have never been the one to take you off of the fence, cause you. Friends, should have never been the one to take you off of the fence, cause you.
So you hear how the S's and T's, all of a sudden it's like magically smooth. And that's because we're controlling that high frequency response and kind of helping this vocal get even smoother just by turning up the color on the compressor. Now there's one more pro tip I want to mention, and this could go for pretty much any part of the mixing process, but it's especially true here. And that is to do everything in moderation. You don't want to use these tools to their extremes, because chances are you're going to have negative side effects. For example, if you use too much EQ and you carve up the vocal, it's going to sound hollow and thin. Or if you use too much de-essing, it's going to sound dull and lifeless. So you have to be careful to use these in moderation and find the right balance. Now, part of what makes a pro vocal mix sound pro is that the vocal still sounds somewhat natural. Even though we're doing a ton of processing and we're creating this heightened, elevated sounding vocal, it still sounds within the realm of possibility of what a vocal could sound like. If you start overdoing the air, overdoing the EQ, you're gonna stray further and further away from the natural recording, and that's what can really make a vocal sound amateur. So try this out in your next production where you wanna get that modern pop air on a vocal. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, leave us a comment, and subscribe for more tutorials like this. And as always, happy mixing.